Welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at another figure from the Robert Harrop limited edition collector figure line. This time around it is a Zygon from the 4th Doctor story, Terror of the Zygons. So it's limited edition 2300 and it's currently available on the Robert Harrop website for £59.99. Now this is one of the older figures in the line. It is in fact the 11th figure to be released. However, it's still available on the Robert Harrop website, so I definitely recommend checking it out if you actually like what you see in this review. Firstly, taking a look at the box, as you can see, it is pretty much your standard format for the normal Robert Harrop boxes. So as you can see on the front, we get the Doctor Who logo along with the BBC logo in sort of a greyish silver. And then we also get the diamond design at the front there with the Starfield along the side. And then, of course, at the very bottom, we get the Robert Harrop logo along with limited edition hand-painted figurine. And then, as per usual, we get the sticker that is rather glossy that does read Who 11, Zygon 1975, Terror of the Zygons, limited edition 2300 from the 4th Doctor era, 1974 to 1981. On the sides of the box, we don't really get anything whatsoever, just the dark blue and the light blue Doctor Who logo, and then exactly the same on the opposite side. And then on the opposite side to this, at the very back of the box, Doctor Who logo once again, and some complete information at the bottom. Nothing on the base of the box, and then of course at the very top we do get the sticker printed once again with your standard information on. However, this time around you do get the limited edition number, mine being 220 out of 300. So as per usual, the box is made out of corrugated cardboard, ensuring that the figure on the inside is protected nicely. On the inside of the box, you do of course get this polystyrene rectangle type thing, which of course protects the figure on the inside that is nicely taped together. And then of course on the very top, we do get the details of the figure once again. So yeah, that is your average box for the older figures and is really nice. Actually, I've never had any damages with my Robert Harrop figures. So that is good. The protection definitely does its job. Just in case all that protection wasn't enough, on the inside of the box you do also get the figure itself in this polythene bag, ensuring that he doesn't break out and take over Scotland or whatever he did in the actual story. So here we have the Zygon himself, and he looks rather unusual in design. Due to this being one of the earlier figures in the line, we do also have this little cardboard base thing that does nicely read Zygon and the Doctor Who logo of limited edition, and then of course at the side we get Who 11 because it's the 11th figure to be released in the line. This is literally just a piece of card. Unfortunately, the later figures in the line don't in fact come with this. That just nicely sits in front of the figure, giving it a little bit of a label, almost like an exhibit in a museum, so that makes it rather professional in feel. Also get your standard Doctor Who certificate of authenticity that has been stylised in the diamond design, which is rather nice and professional looking. And then of course at the very bottom we do get a promotional image of the Zygons from the story, along with certified by Robert Harrop. And then of course on the back we do get a little bit of information about Terror of the Zygons, along with Robert Harrop themselves. And as you can see, man is the 220th figure out of 300. So yeah, that does nicely sit next to the figure when on display. So taking a look at the Zygon in a little bit more detail now, I'm probably going to call him Broton because, hey, that's the only Zygon that I can remember from Terror of the Zygons. And I'm going to get a little bit of the design detailing out the way first, because I find the Zygons very unusual. I think that it's quite hard to believe that it was actually somebody's job to design this rather unusual looking creature, because it does actually look quite alien. I think for 1970s Doctor Who, it definitely goes a little bit above and beyond the idea of somebody stuck in a rubber suit. Of course, you can quite obviously tell there's a humanoid face in there, but the rest of it is rather extraterrestrial looking. We've sort of got a little bit of a aquatic feel with those almost sucker sort of octopus style designs in there, maybe a little bit like a squid or something like that. But yeah, it just looks very unusual, and I can't help but say many times throughout this review, no doubt I'll end up saying suckers, damp and moist several times over and over again, because that is what this figure looks like. It looks like a damp, suckeroid, moist creature. So yeah, they're not exactly the most dignified alien in the world, are they? And they just look really odd at the same time. Starting off at the bottom of the statue, we do get the Zygon Feet. Now, I don't think we ever really seen these within the actual episode, because a lot of the actual angles, I do believe, from Terror of the Zygons were from the waist up, and there's probably a good reason for that, probably because the majority of them weren't really well fastened into their costumes. So we do get a little bit of a blend of sort of the reptilian kind of design, almost like the Sea Devils or Silurians here. So have this rather odd sort of flipper design at the feet with sort of some yellow toenail style things in there, along with a few suckery-eyed things on the side there. And then we also have the legs, which once again continue exactly the same feel. Now, I do really like the way that this is actually almost creased in certain sections. I think that the upper half of the leg looks a lot more bulbous when compared to the actual bottom section. So as you can see, that is a rather sort of humanoid design. It then almost goes a little bit larger towards the thigh area. And then, of course, we do have some rather nice detail going along the very side of the thigh there, replicating all those individual little suckery parts that is seen on the costume itself. Even towards the very top there, you can really see that glimmer in the light, because I have some natural lighting coming from here, from my window near where I of a review, so you can really see how it's sort of got that glossy effect on there, very much making it look like the Zygons as seen in the actual story. From what I can recall, did in fact look rather sort of wet looking. Then we also have a few sculpting designs in there as well, of a few lines and things, which have really nicely been raised above the actual sculpt, giving it a rather nice texture. Taking a look at the upper half of the leg now, going onto the actual waist, we do get a rather big cluster of almost these weird suckery-oid things, which once again have been detailed rather well. And we also get a little bit of a darker section of this orange paint app towards the side there, giving it a little bit of shading, but also giving that clump a little bit more attention at the same time. Then going to the actual chest itself, once again we get this almost like rib cage design, which we do have that continuation of the suckers going up the very front, with once again that glossy design coming across the very front. If you look a little bit closer onto the actual body, we do almost get this fleck design, as you can see, almost like sort of feathers or something like that, even though they won't be feathers, but it's almost like scales that are a little bit more prominent towards the top half of the figure. But if you look closely on the lower half as well, especially around this chest section, you can almost see this really nice sort of fleck design that has been sculpted within to the actual body itself, once again making it look very much like how it did within the actual story. I do also like the way that we get this ridge section along the back as well, once again giving it a rather nice texture, making it look very alien and unusual, along with the actual suckers once again ranging in size as it goes up to the very top of the figure. Once again, the sculpting of the suckers continues to the shoulder and does continue also down the arm as well. This has been sculpted in kind of an open palm kind of position, so we do have once again the suckers at the very end of the fingertips, which everything about this design is just rather odd. I don't know what was going through the designer's mind at the time. It is rather creative at the same time as well. It's almost a bit like a scaly snake or something like that, but I do love the way that we almost have these ridges that have really nicely got this orange paint up towards the side there, really bringing out a few more of those curves a little bit more, which is quite cool. And then the hands themselves have been individually sculpted. We do have the thumb nicely sticking out along with one of the fingers, and then the other three fingers have been really nicely sculpted as well, making it look like he's sort of reaching out for somebody, maybe like how he was doing in the story to try and control his spaceship panel where he did the weird fondling thing. Yeah, the Zygons are just odd. And then on the opposite arm, we do get exactly the same detail pretty much once again. This one, however, has been sculpted in kind of a little bit more of a relaxed position. However, the fingers are oddly clenched, as you can see, one of which is actually sort of going out to the side there, almost looking a little bit curled, but once again we do get the unique designs in there of each individual finger and thumb nicely sculpted, along with this rather nice orange paint app once again replicated above the sides. Closer look at the face now, once again we get a rather unusual expression. He almost looks a little bit worried, but that's the majority of the Zygons in that story did look a little bit worried. But we do have a few scales and things running along the side, as you can see, along the continuation of almost this fleck design that has been made a little bit more prominent, almost looking like small snakes that have kind of been sculpted towards the side of the face. And once again, a really impressive paint app has been applied to this to give it this rather nice sort of dark design, as you can see, really impacting on that crease sort of above here, really creating this nice shading. And then we have the eyes, which have also been quite nicely done. Just get these black pupils that have been painted in this rather nice glossy design. However, I do think it would have been nice to maybe have a lighter paint app around these just to bring more attention to the eyes, because I think almost the pupils do seem to set into the skin a little bit. It would be nice to see those stand out a little bit more. We do also have the sculpting there of the nose as well in its rather pointed manner along the sort of snout piece at the very front. And then we have the mouth looking rather worried, as you can see. Kind of looks a little bit anxious about something, almost like he's waiting to find some friends. I don't know, he looks a little bit lost, especially when you turn him from side to side like that. He just looks a little bit confused. He's basically me wandering around college on a daily basis, wondering where all my friends are and not finding any. But yeah, it's very, very nice. I do like the way that has been done. Then taking a look at the sides of the figure, once again we get more suckers, and then we also get this rather unusual head section, which once again has been sculpted in this rather unusual way, and this odd shape where we have this almost top-heavy section towards the top half of the head, where we have all the snake pieces and all these veins really nicely recreated. And then of course at the very top, do you also get the suckers sort of coming to their full potential. As you can see, we have these ones that are very much quite longer than the rest of the body at the very top, which have been painted in a rather impressive way, along with these actual engraved sections in the very middle as well, actually giving it a little bit of depth, making them look almost like they actually are plunger or suckery kind of designs that is seen within the actual story. I don't know what those would have actually been made of, but I imagine it was probably something like a household object, as with the majority of Doctor Who villains in the 1970s. But I think generally the head is a really nice sculpt and does represent what is seen in the story quite nicely. Planning for this review, I was in fact thinking of saying it would have been nice to see the Zygon in a little bit more of a dynamic position, but that said, I can't really think of a more dynamic position for the Zygons to actually have, because in the story, they generally just look a little bit awkward. They look like they don't want to be there, they look a little bit clumsy, which is kind of exactly what this pose is representing. The arms look a little bit stiff, especially with the emotion of the face kind of embedded within that absolutely gigantic head. He generally looks quite uncomfortable. My only thing that I think could have maybe been added to this figure is the little almost design of the Scarison communicator thing, or the signal remote that was seen in the actual story. That was that tiny little brown device. I don't know if the Zygons actually held that within the actual story, but it may be nice to see that. But other than that, I can't really think of any other pose that this figure could have been in, so I kind of do let them off for that. Just kind of looks like how they did within the actual story. And when this is actually compared to the paint apps as well, I love the way that we get that really nice range, especially where we have the orange on certain sections, because the base is quite obviously almost light yellow colour, and then over the top of this we get this rather nice sort of sprayed orange along the top. I think that considering that this is hand painted, it probably would have took quite a while. And I do also like the way there has almost been a gloss or varnish applied to the very top of this, once again giving it a rather sort of not exactly matte feel but glossy, other than say the Sutek figure that was incredibly statuesque and sort of matte in design. This one looks literally like it's been dunked in some water or something to really nicely give a glossy shimmer. Something that really sets the Robert Harrop figures apart from other Doctor Who statues that I've seen released over the past few years is the actual uniqueness of the base. As you can see, we have this rather unusual design of almost this green moss kind of section, which once again has been painted rather nicely with just this green undercoat. Then we have this almost bluish design added over the top, which once again has this gloss added over to it to make it almost look like the Zygon spaceship as seen within the actual story, or at least the floor of the Zygon spaceship. And then as per usual at the bottom you do get this white base, almost making it look like the Zygon floor has been added over the top of this. And they do get, once again, your standard velvet design, making sure that when it's actually on display, it doesn't move about very much when on display, meaning it doesn't fall over and smash, because you wouldn't want that. And then, of course, at the very bottom, do once again get the sticker that reads all the details about the Zygon, along with the actual unique limited edition number, once again, much like all of the other figures in the line. A bit of a comparison now to some of the other Zygons in my collection. Up until this point, I didn't really see this figure as very special. I think especially when compared to, say, the Special Weapons Dalek or the Mandrill being rather unique, or even Sutek in its impressiveness. But that said, when aligning this Zygon next to the other Zygons in my collection, I can actually see that this figure, or statue even, is in fact rather impressive. I think that this is definitely probably the best representation of the Zygons that I have, because all of the other versions tend to vary quite a lot in what they're trying to display. The 3.75 ones especially are a good example of this, because you have the original version, there's this rather unusual sort of tealy orangey brown mess, and then you have the other version that was released in the Toys R Us exclusive set one that has very black eyes, and then you have the Character Options 5-inch version that is probably the best representation other than the actual Robert Harrop statue, which tends to follow around exactly the same pattern. However, unusually, this one has the silver thing like the communicator device there, but that one doesn't, so I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that's something that maybe Broton had in the story and a standard Zygon didn't. I don't particularly know. Then we have the Figurine Collection version, which is just a little bit unusual. We have some rather unusual paint apps on there, making him look like he's had yellow paint chucked at him more than anything. So yeah, I think that generally this is probably the best representation of the Zygon that I have so far, and it is in fact rather impressive for what it does, because this is the only one that actually looks sort of glossy, like how it did within the actual story, but also at the same time represent rather how deformed they look, and they all look quite unusual as well, as this one looks quite depressed and sad, this one looks rather lonely, and these ones just look a little bit angry, so I don't particularly know what's going on there, but I think I can conclude pretty much that the Zygons are probably one of the most unusual monsters to be in classic series Doctor Who. So overall, for the Doctor Who Robert Harrop limited edition hand-painted figurine of the Zygons, as seen in the 4th Doctor story Terror of the Zygons, it is once again a rather nice addition to the collection. I think similar compliments to my other Robert Harrop reviews, where if you are looking for a very high quality statue of a character seen in Doctor Who, and you may be a big fan of the Zygons, and I definitely recommend this. I think that especially if you're an older, experienced collector, and you have a rather nice cabinet to put it in, then I definitely recommend it. However, if you're a more younger fan, then I don't really recommend this for you, because it is made out of a rather delicate material. It is essentially one of those delicate sort of ornaments, meaning that if it's to fall off the shelf, it would probably instantly smash. So yeah, I don't want to find out what would happen if I dropped this, to be honest. So yeah, if you're somebody that is looking for a high quality figure, then I definitely think that this figure is one that is worth considering, especially for the price range as well. As I said at the start of this video, this is around £59.99, meaning it is quite expensive, undeniably. However, if you're a classic fan and a big fan of the Zygons, then be willing to pay that much. Similar compliments as well. I really like the nicheness of this line. The fact that this is only limited to 300 units and it has a little handwritten number on. I do like a good handwritten number when it comes to a limited edition run of figures, meaning that this does have a really nice collector's value around it. And also, actual compliments about the figure itself. I love the way the paint apps have came out. I think that this is probably one of the more undermined figures of the line because at the end of the day, it is just a Zygon. But I do think that the detailing on it is in fact rather impressive. I love the ranges and tones that we have between the lighter yellows and the darker oranges, really nicely creating that nice range of depth, and especially the way that the suckers have been sculpted around the figure as well, and also the emotion that's kind of portraying looking rather confused and lonely. So yeah, there's quite a lot of compliments for this figure, but also at the same time it would have been nice to maybe see a few alterations in the pose, or maybe it holding the Scarson controller that was seen within the actual story. But other than that, just really minor little complaints that I don't really think affect the figure too much. So I do recommend this figure if you're a fan. Thanks for watching this review. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I guess stay tuned for more Doctor Who product reviews and more Robert Harrop hand-painted statue reviews at some point in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.